Today, we're looking at a green ink by KWZ, their Iron Gall Green number 2. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. Down below there's timestamps so that if there's only certain things you're interested, you can skip around to it. But if you've got the time, I would appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram. And if you like fountain pen ink reviews and are new here, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into this Viscosity Van Gogh with a medium nib, wrote with it for a day, and then made sure I took my notes with it. For the first writing sample, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There is an additional writing sample that'll happen later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. That has no bleeding or ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. That's just a bull ride away from success. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 14 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and there is none. Tomoe River with no bleeding and normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 13 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 28 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and there was none. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is just a little bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 8 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the stub, which you might remember from an hour and a half ago, is just a little bit darker than the extra fine. With no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 17 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and there was none. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this grayish green at the bottom that pushes its way up. We do see the green being a little bit more pronounced at one point right before we get into really kind of a aquamarine color at the top. It's quite interesting. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. Now, the interesting part to me on this one, compared to a lot of the Iron Galls, is it's really not creating a heavy line at the bottom like we've seen before. It's the beginnings of the line on the bottom. But it's not seeping in as much as we had seen previously. This one, I let dry for 24 hours, and we see that that line really did form on the bottom. That green pushes its way up and is much more pronounced here. And now what was an aquamarine color at the top looks a little bit more blue leaning as a turquoise. This one, I let dry for 72 hours before dunking it into water. And that line is very much at the bottom. There is some green moving up, but not nearly as much. And that line at the top, much more leaning towards a turquoise color here, making this pretty interesting, seeing how it's evolved over time. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. I test viscosity or flow with a tilt test that I'll link the video on how I do that. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. KWZ's Iron Gall Green number 2 has a viscosity of 2.03, making this a wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. KWZ's Iron Gall Green number 2 has an average dry time of 15 seconds, so even though it's wet, its dry time is normal. Instead of finding inks that look like KWZ's Iron Gall number 2, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted a nice brown with this green, and I chose Private Reserve's Copper Burst. The second writing sample is done on black and red, Franklin-Christoph, and Limon paper. Here we're looking at black and red notebooks. Now we get no bleeding or ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is just a hair lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 5 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we got none. How about on Franklin-Christoph paper? The medium did create some bleed spots, did have some show through as a result of it. Extra fine did very well. The bleed spots never touched the page underneath, so not a problem. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a hair lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both have no color variation, and we're not getting any. And last up is Limon paper, which the medium gave us a lot of bleed spots. They did not touch the page underneath, but they would stop me from using the back of the page, but they might not stop you. Extra fine did pretty well for itself. The 1.1 had no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine was just a hair lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. Medium was the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both showed no color variation, and we didn't get any, and that is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of KWZ's Iron Gall Green number 2? It's a bit darker than I would prefer, and when you're using a wet pen, I found that it was very prone to spreading on the page. Not feathering, but just spreading. Something to be aware of if you're using a broad or double broad pen, and if you like to write really small with the ultra extra fine, this might not be the right ink for you. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? A wet pen just makes it too dark, but a medium to dry flow, medium to fine pen really puts down a pleasant tone that's definitely a green and not too dark a green. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.